Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I just made it in time there. I was running a bit late. I'm now torn. I'm really torn between talking about what I came here to talk about and following on from the great speeches that I've heard already, because I've been so inspired by the things that they've said, and I feel like I've got things that I could add to it. So I'm going to try and do both. I'll try and say what I came here to say, and then if there's time, I'll add a little bit on there. So thank you, the speakers that I've heard. Sorry I missed you, but I was trying to park. So hi, my name's Darren Deojee. I do men's mentoring, but also other things as well. And I'd like to share with you a bit of a story today. So I was asked to start with, well, what is a man? And I thought that's a very difficult thing to start with. I've been trying to answer that question my whole life, actively. I've been working on the subject of gender for over 20 years. I've been looking for male inspiration for 30, looking for role models, looking for mentors, people that I could admire, who could inspire me. I've struggled. And I've sought to get the answers for myself. So, to answer it tonight for you, what is a man? Well, for me, it's a difficult thing to answer in just so few minutes. So I'll give you a few pointers, really. One of the problems with masculinity in men is that they are seemingly invisible and seemingly absent a lot of the time because of what they're doing. And I think, to me, that's actually the truth within the story of the Immaculate Conception, is actually of a seemingly invisible, seemingly absent masculine presence. And actually, if you ask most children where dad is, they'll be like, well, he's not here. Well, where is he? Well, he's working. What's he doing? I don't know. I don't get to see it. It's invisible, what men do a lot of the time. And I think one of the problems we've got in our culture is because people have had personal problems with individual men, and they've got a male wound from that they then project onto all men, which is what we see in feminism, but not just in feminism, just people who have male wounds. So what I'd like to offer you tonight is a way to bypass that damage if you've experienced it. I had it. I had a very damaged relationship with my father. It's taken me most of my life to repair the damage it did to me and with him, and I have a great relationship with him, but it's taken a lifetime of work. And I know it's very difficult to achieve that. But it's a worthwhile thing, and that's why I want to share this story today. So, if you ask a Native American where their ancestors are, they'll tell you that they're in the rocks and the trees. And if you say that to your average Western guy, he'll be like, what are you on about? In the rocks and the trees. What's in there? But our ancestors aren't really there. I want to paint a picture for you where you can see them and see where you're surrounded by their gifts all the time. And I discovered this thing that I call the spirit of goodwill. That is the spirit of man, the goodwill of men and masculinity that surrounds us all now. And it's become invisible. And I discovered this accidentally by taking men on rites of passage, taking them on a thing that I call beyond the edge. This is where boys are made into men. They're made into men at the edge of the known, at the edge of safety, at the edge of themselves. And a lot of men today have never been shown that. They've never been taken to the edge of themselves. So you'll have men with greys in their hair still feeling like a boy, and they won't know that they may have the age of a man, but they won't feel it. And they wonder what it means within themselves. They won't have transformed themselves in that way. So I've been doing this for quite some time with men, and I discovered something that happens to all men when you take them beyond the edge where they're tested and they have to endure something. And they come back with something that I paraphrase as, what can I do so that when I go back, I can stay longer, go deeper, do better, or so that those who come after me can stay longer and do better. And that refinement surrounds you all now. That process surrounds us all right now. Because what men do is they codify their experience into tools and processes. So that right now, nothing has changed in 100,000 years. It takes as long now as it did 100,000 years ago to build a fire from scratch without tools. It takes as long now as it did 100,000 years ago to build a shelter from scratch without tools and methodology. Okay? So you can go out now, people, how many here have used a saw? Used a saw? Everyone used a saw at some point? Yeah? Okay. So most people will go and spend maybe £9, £10 on a saw in a DIY store and think it's like a designed object. And they'll think they're also competent and also cool when they go home and saw their bit of wood. Oh, I'm a DIY, I'm a carpenter. Oh yeah, look what I did. Did a shelf, cupboards, great, a man. Or, if you're a woman now these days, I don't need a man. That's the big one, I don't need a man. Because I can do this myself. So, the thing is though, that saw is not a designed object. Okay, it's a refined object. And it began millennia ago, probably with some guy sitting on a rock, wet, cold, upset that this thing he was trying to cut something else with got stuck. He's like, why is this not cutting? It's stuck. I'm going to have to walk 3 days to the blacksmith to get it honed, resharpened, or something like that. What can I do so that next time I can stay longer, go deeper, do better? And over time, we refined the taper of the blade, the number of teeth, the angle of the teeth, how to cut it, how to shape it, how to sharpen it, the taper on the hand. So that now, as you feel so cool by spending £10 on a saw that will cut effectively, which is quite an amazing achievement, really what you're holding in your hand is probably the power of 5,000 ancestors. You've got 5,000 ancestor power in your hands there to make you feel oh so cool and competent. How long would it take you to saw that bit of wood without the saw, with your hand? Could you? Could you reinvent the tool? Okay, this is an incredible gift. You look at the drill, 60 quid. Barring physical disability, you can go and drill 4 mil in concrete, 4 inches, and feel oh so capable, oh so competent, oh so manly, oh so I don't need a man. How many ancestor powers in that drill? 1 million? 5 million? You've got a car, the phone, the building you're in now. So my point there is that loads of people in the world today can see confidently and easily what we get from the women, because we're all here to give birth to us all. But I hear so many people saying, what do we get from the men? What are men good for? What do I need a man for? Well, for people that think like that, I invite you to go and sit in a field with no shelter, no toilet, no running water, and no garments for a few weeks to ponder the answer. Because that is the truth of it. That is the truth of it, and I jest you not, because it's an enormous... The disrespect and denigration of our ancestral gifts is a massive issue. The natives would say that one of the great disconnections we have in the West is a disconnection from ancestry. How many people here respect your parents? How many care for them, give time for them? Great. Well, I would expect you not to be the norm being in a room like this anyway. But a lot of the people that I encounter daily do not respect their parents, are quite happy to send them off for somebody else to wipe their bum when they're older, when in fact that was done for them. They're not willing to return the gesture. They won't travel to pay attention to the people that wipe their own backside. They don't make the effort to hear the tales and the stories of the ones that came before. We're burning the bridges to the gifts of our ancestors, and we think it doesn't mean anything. But what it's done is, it's removed our gratitude and increased our arrogance, hugely. So that right now, what most people don't realize is that you are literally wrapped in a cave of your ancestors right now. So you don't have to think about the freezing cold out there. You don't have to worry about what's going to happen to the stench of your next dump or your next pee. You don't have to worry about drinking water, walking miles for it, because it was given to you in the spirit of goodwill that says, I've done this so that you can go deeper, go further, and do better. And I ask you, what are you doing with that gift? Bickering and picking fights over crap is what I see happening. And so for me, if you have experienced personal male wounds that make you struggle to connect with other men, I invite you to try to connect with this massive bubble of positive masculinity that you're surrounded by all the time. Whenever you pick up the phone to call the police, the fire brigade, all the law processes, by thinking men that have discerned, knowing the consequences of getting it wrong over time, to try and iron out these processes so that we can use them so whimsically for our whims. And so that now, if we look at the situation of feminism and this gender war of men on women or women on men, what we see is women wearing a robo-suit of masculinity, claiming that it's feminine power. They're wearing like a big robot artifact of the gifts of their male ancestors to wage war against the same. I think they are, you know, ungrateful louts comes to mind. Utter ingrates, you know, that's what I see surrounding me. But I see it in the young men as well, total ingrates for the gift that have been given to them. You know, it's like, moving forward from that, what can we do? And I think one of the problems is, because we've got individual male wounds and no mentors, no other men leading us from the path of boyhood into manhood, it's just easier to surround ourselves with those things and to be wrapped up in those gifts. But really, in a way, unless you are comfortable in the elements and comfortable and competent with bare scratch materials, you're almost living in a bubble of your ancestral gifts, possibly never having lived in the real world. It's quite a thing to consider. And all I'm asking for you in the sharing of this tale is a sense of gratitude and also a sense of connection, because I've found that as I've journeyed with this story within myself, it's like I can feel my ancestors willing me on, wishing me well, urging me to keep going when I want to curl up and give up. And since I've shared this with others, other people that I know have faced adversity and wanted to give up, by feeling and connecting with this generosity of spirit that's in your ancestral line, it can just help give you a bit more oomph to keep going. And so it is a little bit of a male healing. I know you weren't sure about using the word spiritual. I'm not sure about that either. You know, it's like saying, you know, it's a dangerous term, I think, these days. But this has helped people with male wounds. If you let it sink in, this tale, as you next time that you're in the cold and you notice you're not feeling it, or you're in the rain and it's being deflected off you, or you don't have to deal with your next dump, have a little gratitude as you're flushing that and it's just disappearing. A little gratitude for the effort and the ingenuity that's enabled that to be so. Because I've lived off grid in the woods with my family for years, and I can tell you, dealing with all their poo and their water and the heating, chopping it all the rest of it, it's not fun, and there's not much time to do anything else. Chopping wood, carrying water, dealing with dumps, all that sort of stuff, there's not much time to do anything else. So if you have been given the time to not worry about those things, I just ask you to use it wisely, use it generously, you know. And to try and now fulfill part 2, but a few minutes, I will need to tie in with what this chap here was saying. He's absolutely right, absolutely brilliant, dynamite speech on the passivity in modern men. And I want to speak to why that's come about, if that's all right. Have I got time? Have I got a few minutes? Yeah, okay, I just need a swig of water. Where did I put it? Oh, thank you. Okay, so I want to explain why this has happened and what's going on with it, if that's all right. So, quickly check what I had written down there about it. Okay, so many of you have been told you live in a patriarchy. I love what you said about a real patriarchy. I think you were spot on as well. Wonderful. You could say a lot about what she said as well, but I want to stay focused in the next few minutes. So you're told you live in a patriarchy, but there's an interesting thing about that, because I'm meant to be in the oppressor class, you know, the winning class, as it were, but there's places that I can't go unless I wear certain garments. Okay, now obviously this isn't it, but this is an example of one of them up here. So can I just ask you, what do we call this part here? What's this called? A collar, that's right. And what's the part around my wrists? What's that called? A cuff, yes, that's right. And what do I put in the collar? Or in the collar? Tie, okay. So who else wears a collar, cuffs, and a tie? Bankers, but who else? Don't think of the fabric, think of the term. Who wears a collar and cuffs? Prisoners. What other context in our language of wearing a collar and cuffs is there, other than clerics perhaps? Slaves. Slaves and prisoners are the only ones that wear a collar and cuffs. We live in a graded collar system where only the men are collared and cuffed. It's a blue collar, white collar, dog collar, which is the clerical system. All the police are known by their collar number, and I'm not making it up. Okay, this isn't some conspiracy. It's been staring you in your face your whole life, and just because you were born into it, it doesn't change what those things are and what those words mean. Just because you've been tricked by the context of the fabric, it's in the right place. So, my only point of mentioning that is There is no record of when that started. You can search online and find out what people in 1682 wore, but you can't find out the origin of the collaring of the men. And that is meant to be a patriarchy. You'll never see a prime minister of this country out uncollared and cuffed. Ever. How is that patriarchy? How is that the oppressor class if it's the male that's collared and cuffed? And what has been collared and cuffed, my friend, there is the energy that is not passive in men. That's the thing. So in the system I teach from, I work with Toltec gender. I've been working with it for over 20 years. I'm probably the only teacher in the West that teaches in it. And in it, we view gender as an expression of electromagnetism in human relating. So that's why you use the language of attraction, being repulsed by somebody, the spark in your relationship, whether somebody is resisting you. These are all electromagnetic terms. Even your capacity, sexual or otherwise. This is electromagnetism, and we already use the terminology because that's what it is. And we use it across the board in every context. We are already using electromagnetic language to refer to what's happening in our relationships without noticing that it's actually gendered language. And so in totequity, the electrical is the masculine in you, whether you're a man or a woman. So that is whenever you are charged up. All of your charge is masculine. Your magnetic, your attraction is feminine. So men, that's why you have to deal with the equivalent of the menstrual cycle in men is called the charge cycle. So there's times when you really want to discharge and other times when you don't. And women, this is why you have to deal with being magnetic and being attractive at different times. And what has happened in men is they have lost the ability to take charge of themselves, to take charge of the energy moving through you on a regular basis, rhythmically. In the same way as women menstruate, so do men have a charge cycle that will drive you mad unless you discharge. And our culture is set up for the spasmic and unskillful discharge of masculine energy. And this is what your pornography is about, your games console, your sports stadium, the alcohol and drugs readily available to you for you to suppress and medicate yourself. What do we call the atmosphere at the football stadium? Electric. Because they are going there to vent a charge they are not allowed to vent anywhere else. Because men don't know how to express that charge skillfully anymore. And there's a term for it, and the term for taking charge properly is called temper. And this is about metal. Temper is about honing metal, and it's about turning something that is brittle into a useful edge. And that's what men are supposed to do with their charge. They're meant to hone their desires for change and differentiation into a useful edge so that it doesn't spasm out all unskillfully, causing harm to themselves and others, which is what our culture is set up for, obviously. So taking charge, so temper, most people think about it as only being anger, but temper applies to everything, okay? It applies to all your feelings. Any desire for change that you have is masculine, whether it's sadness, whether it's frustration, whether it's depression, overwhelm, any of these things are all a desire for the world to be different. And if you can't get out of bed in the morning because you feel so bad about the state of the world, you've lost your temper with your frustration or your sadness. It's crippled you and got the better of you. If you can't deal with your anger at the upset of the world that you have to go and take drugs and medicate yourself and party all weekend, you've lost your temper. To be able to turn that energy, that desire, that will for the world to be different into a useful edge that can serve you and your community. This is the problem that men face these days, is they don't know how to take charge. And this culture does not welcome unskillful masculinity. So, just to finish, all of us were born as babies in the same way. So, a baby on the mat there, you won't get it on film, but if I lie here, and all of us were like, you know, pooing, peeing, filling your nappy. You had zero dexterity and skill with your physical body, but you had loads of awareness. And in about a year, all of you managed to make your body walk without anyone showing you what you do with a leg. All right, you just saw people doing it, and you kicked your own legs around until you made them work. Within 2 years, you were able to make that body talk without anyone showing you what you do with a larynx. And even now, you still don't know what you do with your larynx, but I can still understand you. So you went from spasmically kicking to developing some skill and some dexterity. And so that now I could throw a ball, you can probably catch it. You can carry a hot drink without spilling it. Because you've got some skill and dexterity with this limb that used to spasm. Okay? When your gender energy starts moving at puberty, it does the same thing the physical body did, and it spasms and it lashes unskillfully. But where is the support you got to get good with it? Where is the encouragement to realize skill lies at the other end of this ugly bit, of you getting it wrong here, of you being a bit unskillful? Skill comes after, not before. And that's what we've lost for young men in our culture, is to allow them to be unskillful with what's coming through them first, knowing that it will develop skillfully at the end. So that's what I do with guys, is I try to create spaces where they can be unskillful so they can move towards skill for dealing with their relationships, their families, and all the rest of it. And I think that that is, because unskillful masculinity is so unwelcome in our cultures, I think that's the only way forward for us, is for men to go into pockets by themselves, to sort themselves out, really, because it's not welcome anywhere else. But I do think that this man hit the nail on the head, because if men in this country cannot take charge of their desire for things to be different, then it won't change. And the figures of 84 men a week killing themselves is only going to climb. So, in closing, I don't know what to say now. I'll just finish with, try learn to live off the cuff. This is the thing, learning to live off the cuff. Take charge of your desire for change. Know that, as he said, not only is it not going to be easy, you're not going to be welcomed when you start trying to speak your truth, but your voice will probably shake the first time. Your lip might wobble. Your knee might shake, because that's the truth of your capacity right now. But the more you stand with that moving through you, speaking live, with the passion of your desire for it to be different, you will get better, you will be more skillful, you will be more effective, and that is, that's the kind of guy this country needs. Thank you.